This is a tutorial for the RootsStonesAndBones tarot card case. This one I'm going to do has the sash across. They do have the tutorial on their PDF with the pattern on their Etsy that has the button. So the button would look something like that. They show you the cutout. I'm not fond of the button idea. I like the sash, so that's the one that I'm going to do. So you can pick whatever fabric that you want, and then your accent fabric, and then your inside. This bag holds the standard size tarot cards. It is the 2.75 by 4.75 inches, and when this is completed, going by the inches, it looks to be about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches down, and 1, 2, 3, probably 3.5 across. And then of course it all depends on the corners that you sew for how it looks holding the cards. So this is the pattern. You have this piece that you cut 2 outer, 2 liners. I wrote down the interface size, the 12 centimeters by 12.7 centimeters, and also this is that sash size, it's a 12. I fold it like this so then I can just cut my interface without having to print up another one. This is the flap, 1 outer, 1 liner. That's the piece that goes like this. So these are the fabrics that I'm going to be using. This is going to be my sash. And then the interface, they don't really tell you what size interface. So I created one that was more so almost half, a little under. And what I'm going to do is put in the middle and then put the sash together like so when I'm ready to stitch it. So this is the flap here. You've got the both sides. You have the inside I'm going to do and the outside. And this one, they don't do interface, but if you wanted to put some type of interface, it'd be perfectly fine to do the same size. This is going to be the body. I'm going to put the black on the inside, and I'm going to use this as my outside of the case. And the interface is going to sit like this when you sew it. And this will go on both sides of the inner piece. When you go to stitch this, you would line it up. It would be the design faces together. And when you sew this, you go down one side into the point and up the other side, and you leave this open. That's for you to turn it, and at the end it will all be tucked in. So I'm gonna take my clips and just gonna put one clip here, just go around. So once when you're done clipping, you bring it to the machine. Like I said, cut just these sides, you leave that open. So it will be a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you start going around the sides, give your back stitch so it doesn't rip open. Go at the speed you feel comfortable with, removing the clips or pins as you go. So once when you're done, you can either clip or burn your thread. corners to release some of the bulk. Switch to my big scissors for this because I'm going to clean this up a little bit too. So these scissors are the Guggenheim. And for a really good sale on their website. I absolutely love these. My thread cutters are the same model, or brand rather, and they just cut. Sometimes they cut too well and it just skates over. Makes crooked lines. That's how good it cuts sometimes. So once when that's all done, that is when you can flip it over. So, this is my wool pad for my ironing, because we're going to iron this once when I get this all set. So what I use is, I think it's a quilting stick. Really needed something. I didn't feel like spending $20, so it's like $4 at Hobby Lobby. Just go through, pick all the points out using this little tool. It's also really good because the little ballpoint's not that big, so you can go in and push the corners. You can use the other end if you wanted to, but what I like is this. Sometimes I'll use it to push the fabric through underneath the needle. So once when that is all done, you will iron it so that you can get a fatter crease. And then what you would do after this is you would cut, they say a 3/8 of a seam allowance. I'll usually just do it again at the quarter. It doesn't really matter, whatever you feel comfortable doing, but we're just going to do a top stitch so that we can hold these corners down more. And that would be it. And then you would once again cut off your thread. Next thing I'm going to do is the sash that holds the flap down on the front. So what I do is I take the interface and I put it in the halfway. And then what I would do is I would fold these in till they were touching like so. Iron that down so that I can keep a straight line on them. Nice crease. And then I would take it and fold it. The only thing that stinks about this wool thing is it makes every black fabric hairy. So flatten that down again. It drives me crazy, all this hair on it. It's bad enough that my Shiba gets hair everywhere. So once when that's done, I would clip the open side just to keep it closed. And then probably 3/8 I would sew down here and on this side. So it will look just like that when it's done. And then you just cut the tails off. And this sits on the side and waits. So when you do the outer part of the bag, this is where you get your sash together, because we are going to put that here. So they say about 3 inches from the bottom. So I believe that is going to be about 8 centimeters or so. And you're going to put the bottom of the sash at that 3. So this is the 3 inches. And put these together. Just make sure everything lines up. It's 7.5. So just make sure it all lines up. And then take your other side and you put 2 right sides together, so the dull side is facing the outside. And pin this all together. Just pin that together so that the sash does not move during the sewing. I'm going to put one at the top as well. And at the bottom. And you sew the 3 sides. You leave this open so that you can open it. So just sew here a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance is perfect. And again, just the 3 sides, leave this open. This is where everything's going to be flipped. This is what it'll look like once when it's stitched. So this is the piece that's open. And you're not going to trim your corners yet because we need to do a box. But what I'm going to do is the inside part first, and then I'm going to box both sides. So I'm going to cut off these tails and then begin with my inside. So for the liner bag, this is where you're going to add your interface if you're going to follow the steps that the tutorial PDF says. So you're going to take your 2 inside pieces, and with mine, since they're both the same, there's no right way to put, so I'm just going to pick one side. And the way I do it is I would line up my pieces. If you have a design, you would do the right sides together, and then you would take the interface that's 12 centimeters across. And what I do, there's probably an easier way to do this, but I will pin this, and then after I pin it, I flip it over, and I put the other side in. That way it's holding one side and now it's just waiting for the other. So, flip, and now when I check the C's, this is the 12 centimeters. So I'm going to just slip this under. I'm going to pinch my clips and slip these under, and now it is ready to be sewn. So, same thing as the outer, you just do the 3 and you leave this open so that you can flip it. So, when everything looks good, bring it to your machine, and about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance is perfect. Again, 3 sides, This one is open. And then cut the tails. And then we're gonna start getting ready to box. So this is the tricky part, especially if you're not familiar with boxing the corners. So that entails basically combining both edges together, but you know, not like this. So what I do is I'll go in, I'll kind of put my finger into the corner, and I'll split the two fabrics and then pinch. That way I have this little triangle. Both sides have the fabric split, and this is where I'll just kind of heat it down. And you do this with both sides of the inner and the outer parts of your bag. So I am just going to show how I did this, and then I'm going to show where I sew, and then it's going to be boxed when I come back. So on my machine next to my foot, I have lines that tell me how far away. So what I do is there's a 5/8 line, and I'll actually put the little crease part here at that 5/8 line. Since my needle's in the middle of my foot, it is, let's see, it will be almost 1.5 centimeters from the point to here. Okay, so that's what it would look like. So you would do this on each end, and then on the lining, or the outer part, since this is the liner. And then when you're done, that's when you'll cut your corners. Cut your tails, of course. And I'm going to finish up, and I'll be right back. So once when all your corners are sewn in, kind of looks like this, where it's starting to look like a box in a way. So this is when, like I mentioned, this is where you're gonna cut these corners off, so it removes any bulk when the two pieces are put together. So now here is the part that gets a little tricky. Not me at first. So what this is supposed to do is you have to fold these over, right? Because you're gonna basically create your seam with these folds. So you take your outer bag and you turn it inside out, or right side out. Get your sash right here. And say about 2 inches is where you're going to fold. So on the outer part, because this is the outside and you want a seam inside, you turn this way. So you fold it all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it first. I'm going to flatten it, and I'm going to make sure that was the size I wanted. So it looks a little off. I don't think both sides match. So I'll take my ruler. So I've got about almost 2.5 centimeters on one side, and more so too on the other. So I'm going to pull this in a little bit more. And then for good measure, what you can do, you can grab some cards and see if that is a good length. So let's see. Making up for some of it. So this is sitting right here. I can probably bring this in a little further. That's one side. And then you take the other side and you leave it like this because this is going to actually go inside the bag. But you need to have your nice seam. So this is where you're going to do the same exact thing. You're going to fold it in. This one's a little easier to measure because you can use the interface as your guide of where you're going to put this. And then check that around. So it's about 2.5. 2.5. So that should be good. So once when you get that, you take this in and you insert it into the outside of the bag. And you make sure it goes all the way in. So this is the part you got to pay attention to because you don't want the fold, that edge, to wrap around your outer. You want to match up your corners, your lines rather. You want to make sure all that is even as it goes on. So you gotta move this over a little bit. You're gonna push it all the way to the bottom. So the inside is covered by the outer. Now, once when these two are together, you can clip. What I did was I actually used a pin this time around because the pins, you can move it around a little more. But I do clip the other side. So this outer side, I will pin. And then I'll take the back side, and this is where you put the flap in. The flap, make sure that you have your outer design outside and the inner is going to be in. So this is actually going to go between the two layers. And you want to make sure it is even as well. They say about 1 inch is good enough. So, see that? It's about even on both sides. Make sure it's straight. And I'm just going to put a clip on. So this will be open. And when it closes, that's what it's going to look like. So see, this piece, I'm going to just tuck that in. It's easier. And what you do is now you're going to sew, probably about 3/8. You're going to sew around. So you're going to put the needle in. I usually start in the back, so if there's any puckering, it's hiding in the back. And you just sew right along, wrapping this around where you're sewing. Watch out for that point. I always get my finger. So, and then you take it to your machine. So the tricky part about this is making sure that the fabric doesn't fall into the needle and then you're sewing it all shut. So you just gotta be mindful of your top piece while you stitch the bottom. So you wrap it around. I'm gonna actually bring this around so you can see. So, see how, there we go. I'm actually going to put it right on my line, which is about 3/8 of an inch. And then I'm just going to circle that around. So again, you go, make sure to back stitch, and then just slow and steady, make sure you keep that line and your fabric up top away from the needle. So this is where I start to rotate it. I rotate the fabric, I'm keeping it away from the needle, sewing them through. So this, you gotta watch out again, see how the flap is under? If I sew that, it's gonna be attached. So make sure to flip your flap back out. And we will finish the stitch. And make the two meet. And back stitch. I do a one forward and release. And then I cut. And that's it. And then what I do is, because this is the finished product, I'll actually burn these off. I use an electric, and you just burn off the thread. If you're using the polyester thread, it will create a little bulb so that it doesn't pull through. Cotton will light on fire and doesn't really bulb out nice. So that is it all the way around. And it's the inside of the bag. Take the flap, put it in. So here it is, all done. And I got the fabric around, the black sash, black inside, and then what you can do is you can take your cards, make sure they fit inside, put the sash on, or if you went with the button thing, you can do that as well, and that's it. So here are the cards inside the Roots, Stones, and Bones tarot case.